Welcome to the Amplifying Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Tara Lehman, a partner, coach, and consultant at Twin Life Coaching and Business Services, of which Amplifying Leadership is a division. This podcast is a place dedicated to amplifying your leadership through our guest stories, tips, information, and more. To learn more about our leadership division, please visit us at amplifyingleadership.ca. Today, I am welcoming Alessandra Wall, CEO and a founder. Welcome to Amplifying Leadership.
Good morning. Good morning. It's morning for us. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. And I'm excited about our topic that we were just talking about before we hit record here. But before we get started, why don't you let our audience know just who are you and what is your leadership story?
So, as stated, my name is Alessandra Wall, and I started my career as a clinical psychologist. So I'll just mix both stories.
Sure.
I'll mix both stories at the same time. I started my career as a clinical psychologist, and like many people, I set the course on what my career would be when I was a little girl. I thought I knew exactly what I wanted to be, and I was so sure that I would want to be just that one thing because we don't teach children that most humans have multiple careers in their lifetime, especially when many of us are going to work way past our 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And absolutely loved it and discovered a lot of things. And one of the things I discovered is that to me, getting people to move into action, to take ownership of their choices in their lives and to exercise agency was probably one of the most important things in terms of driving me. And I moved into the space of coaching, which I love in some ways. And today I have a boutique coaching and leadership practice that is very much focused on working with leaders who are on the other side of success. So not so much the way I did in my early years was getting people into these positions of leadership, but here working with people who already on paper look incredibly successful, might actually feel incredibly successful, and figuring out what's next, what now, and how do I get there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, I want to ask you this because you talk about a quote, Gilded Cage in senior
Mhm.
leadership. What exactly is that?
So much of my work at this point focuses on women in senior leadership. It's not that it's the only group I work with, but it is certainly an area where I have a lot of specialized knowledge and practice. And what I found is most of us, well, actually, you tell me for a second, when you were moving into leadership, Tara,
Mhm.
and when you're building what was going to be quote unquote a successful career and a successful life, what was your expectation about what life would look like and what work would look like once you had gotten to that space where you were successful?
I think everybody thinks money first. So, financial stability is usually something that you expect when you get there. But for me, I was all about growth. I loved learning, and that was a key piece for me. It still is a key piece for me, is that I can't sit still. So, if I get comfortable with something, like give me something new to learn. And that was why moving up was so important to me because I wanted to learn and learn more about organizations, how they run, all of those types of things.
Okay. Any expectations in terms of what the payoff would be in your personal life?
There wasn't a lot of expectations there. I think when I very first started moving into management, I really didn't know what that would look like. I traveled a lot and I had a young daughter at the time when I traveled a lot. And so that piece of it was more difficult, I think, than I expected, right? Because I would travel, sometimes up to 12 weeks a year
Mhm.
and seeing her and this started when she was about 2. So, it was difficult. I think that piece I wasn't too sure about.
So what I find is that most of the women and most of the leaders I work with have this vision of what it means to be successful. One is, yes,
Hmm.
they will be earning their living well,
Hmm.
and that what they earn will be commensurate to the value that they're bringing into the world. That's one
Hmm.
thing. Two is that they'll be able to have some kind of impact. What I hear a lot,
Hmm.
especially from the women in leadership, is I want to be part of the conversations that shape my industry, my space,
Oh,
or that
yes.
change things,
Hmm.
right? This is a huge, huge piece. Three is that they'll actually have authority. right? Meaning they will have the power and the influence to do something with this title that they have, with this success that they've built, with the expertise that they have. Four, that they will have more freedom. There is this sense that, once I've worked my way to the top and I will have demonstrated what I can do, I'll have more breathing room.
Mm,
I won't be mired in the details of what things will happen. I will have control over my schedule. Um, I will be able to enjoy more of my downtime. I mean, it's not that we have unrealistic dreams about that, but it is the wish, it's the fantasy. And
yeah.
another big fantasy is I will have arrived. And that sense of I will have arrived and I will feel like this thing I've been working towards, I'll be more confident and I'm going to have
Hmm.
this sense of satisfaction and fulfillment.
Hmm.
So that's beautiful and it's wonderful. And I actually will say, I not only believe I know it's possible, but the reality for the majority of leaders I work with is they get to this other side of success. And what they find is there's one group that has a seat at the table, but no voice.
Yes.
They have the title, they supposedly have it. I cannot tell you the number of times I hear the women I work with go, why do I still have to repeat myself 7 times before somebody listens to me?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
have a leader who's a CFO, and she's like, the board gets frustrated, but about things, but I'm telling them this months in advance. You need to watch for this. This is going to come up. And then when it happens, the board is frustrated.
Hmm.
She's getting in trouble because she's literally telling the board, I told you so, and the board is not appreciating that.
I'm sure they're not.
And the other group of people are people who have worked their way to the top. We call them workhorses versus powerhouses by working extremely hard, by showing up, by being Wonder Woman, by being everything to everyone at all times. And they get to this place of success and they might have a voice and a seat at the table, but they're so used to showing up by being that Wonder Woman that they actually don't reap the benefits of freedom. They're
Hmm.
exhausted once they get there and they
Yes.
don't know how to break out of that. And they've created dependency. So this is the expectation everybody has for them. They're the decision makers, they're the crisis people. They're the like, go call
You're the
Tara, show me
counselor.
what to do about it.
Yeah.
You're the everything to everybody. So you get
Yeah.
to the top, but you don't have that kind of spaciousness that you expect. I have
Hmm.
a lot of the leaders I work with who are incredibly successful. And what they'll say is, but I'm not as happy as I thought I would be. I'm not as fulfilled. And what we
Hmm.
find is their careers have been so reactive to the
Yes.
opportunities that have come. A lot of these women and men are folks who have never once in their life had to apply for a job. Things have just come their way, which
Come to them.
sounds
Hmm.
wonderful until you reach this place where the way you're showing up in the world, that even the change, the impact you're having is in misalignment with who you
Hmm.
are. And
Yeah.
it's that place can feel like a very isolated space to be in, very
Hmm.
lonely because who do you talk to when your career and your life looks amazing, but you're not satisfied with it. And when you don't even
Hmm.
understand why, you ask these people, what do you need? They cannot answer those questions. So that to me is a gilded cage that we see a lot of folks in those spaces, but they're so successful. Like I have one client right now who is chronically overextended. She owns
Hmm.
her own business, same thing. She was a CFO. She moved out of a CFO role. Within a week of moving out of that role, she was offered a huge consulting contract, and that led to her building an incredibly successful consulting company. But
Hmm.
she is constantly overpromising. She is a helper by nature. And when we look at the fact that she's tired, so she's somewhere between my Wonder Women and we call them icons, the ones who on paper look great but are misaligned, and my
Hmm.
icons. But when we talk about the change and the resistance internally to the change, she's like, I make so much money. And that money allows her to play hard when she's not working so hard. And the
Hmm.
fear is, but if I get back into realignment, am I going to want to give up these things that have allowed me to be incredibly financially successful?
Hmm.
And that's the resistance that she and I have to work towards. And I have to build trust with these women to help them understand, what if you could have both? Like, it might not
Yes.
look the same way. And
Hmm.
I have a category of clients, I have to say, who I call them legacy builders, and they're on the other
Hmm.
side of success, and they have the voice, they have the seat, they're managing their time. I think of them as it's like coaching top athletes. When you're coaching top athletes, you're not fixing anything, you're allowing them to continue to operate at this really high level and continue to
Hmm.
feel, you talked about growth, continue
Hmm.
to grow, continue to feel challenged, continue to look at what's the next summit I want to climb. So
Hmm.
there, those folks have exited the cage.
Yeah. I want to unpack a couple of things that you've mentioned because having been a person who was running a distribution center in Canada and then jumping ship to do my own thing, there's various reasons why people do that. And even, misalignment is usually that piece or the burnout. I find a lot of my clients, like they just can't do it anymore. It's too much. And it's because the expectations are different. And I want to come back to the whole idea of why are we not heard? Let's start there first, right? As we start to unpack this, because as female leaders, you're right. Sometimes we can say things 15 times before we're actually heard, especially if we're at a leadership table where, we're the only female.
Mhm.
Let's
There,
unpack that a little.
there are a couple reasons. So one are things that we right now don't have, I think, the immediate power to change in the short term, but that is part of the reason why I do the work I do. So our mission,
Hmm.
my mission, and I just realigned it.
Excellent.
2025 has been an interesting year, so I had to really think about.
Hmm.
I know what my personal mission is. That's just the through line. It's what Simon Sinek would call your my why. I know my why, but
Yes.
at
Love
work,
that
it's
book.
really about ensuring that the leaders who can change the world feel that they have the bandwidth, the desire, and the drive to do that work.
Yeah.
Um, but the reality is that when we look at systemic gender bias, which exists for all
Hmm.
of us, wherever you are on the gender spectrum, it does not matter. You have this
Hmm.
baked into your DNA at this point. All of us have a tendency to listen to men more closely than women, to believe men and to not believe women. So if I stand on stage with somebody who has a similar background, similar degree, we dress and we're showing up with a similar level of executive presence, maybe even our gestures are the same. We could be saying exactly the same thing. If they're a man, the audience will believe what they're saying, and I might receive more questions about demonstrating that what I'm saying is true. So that's a problem.
Hmm. Yes.
I don't know if you know this. I found out this week, and it's really making me angry. We see this in LinkedIn's algorithm,
Yes, I've heard about that. Yes.
right?
You
So
can
if you're
change your
listening to
gender
this
on
and
there.
you don't know this,
Yes.
I'm a woman, I'm a female, I present as both. But if I go on LinkedIn and I change nothing, not my tagline, not my about section, nothing about what I post, but in my profile, I indicate that I am a male, my post will gain views. And if you are a man listening to this and you change nothing about it, it will say he in your tagline, in your about section, you post exactly the same thing, but you go into your profile and you indicate that you are female, you will get less traction. So that
Yeah.
bias is baked in when we're looking at the way AI works. The problem is AI is scraping data online, but most of the data is still geared towards and about men and highlighting
Hmm.
men's. And so even AI is coming out and is demonstrating or replicating the biases we see. So we can't help
Hmm.
that except by positioning more women and calling it out. And I mean, I work on it. When I listen to people, I have to stop myself and go, am I doubting her credibility because there's something in what she's saying, or
Hmm.
is it this? I remember looking to hire somebody and interviewing a male and a female, and I'm like, am I more tempted to hire him because he's a man or because he's actually the right person for the job? The
It's
answer
good that
was
you
he was the right
reflect,
person for
right?
the job, but you have to
Yeah,
reflect, and it's
you have
and it's
to.
disturbing to have to reflect and recognize that. So that's one part that I think is just part and parcel. The other thing is um, we tend to listen and want to align with people who look like us. So when you have a room that is
Mm,
mostly male or mostly a certain demographic, the people who match that demographic are going to listen to each other a little bit more. And we
yeah.
see that. You see that all the time. You question the outsider. That's part of that is a survival mechanism of tribalism that comes from millennia of evolution.
Hmm. Yeah.
The third thing that I've seen has to do with, and I know the women listening are going to be so annoyed at this, but it's us. So,
Mm,
because this is baked into our experiences since we are little girls, because we receive more pushback when we act and present assertively, we communicate in ways that are very hesitant.
mhm,
We communicate in ways that do not always support our authority. We show up in ways that don't support our authority. And I will say, I've seen that in myself since I moved from being a psychologist into coaching. At one point, I hired a business coach, and she would listen to my calls and she would say, "Oh, Alessandra, of course they love you. You're warm, you're engaging, you make them feel seen and heard. They want you as their best friend by the end of the call. They're not going to pay $25,000 to work with you." And I was like,
mhm,
"Why?" And she's like, "You're not showing up with authority."
mhm.
I
You got to
lean
get.
into what is natural for me and what is easy and what as a woman especially is taught, which is the warmth side, the kindness side, the likability. And that
Mhm,
likability is fine. It's actually really, really important. But in terms of being heard and having charisma, we need to pair that likability with authority in terms of
mhm,
being the expert in the room. And that requires speaking plainly, speaking directly, not saying I think. And as a
mhm.
woman, if you're listening to this, it is okay to catch yourself. I often will say
100%.
things like, I think, and then I'll stop and I'll say, actually, I don't think I know.
Yeah, I tell my clients the same thing. Hope is another one. I hope that this will happen. I'm like, no, change it to I will or it will. Same
Yes.
idea. Yeah,
Yeah. And if you're
absolutely.
not certain about something, I like using academic language or scientific
Mm,
language. One of the hypotheses, based on the information we have on hand, what I would hypothesize is what I believe we're going to be seeing is, and using that very kind of more scientific language to communicate the fact that I don't have certainty around this, but also to say, this is not me
mhm.
guessing. It's not just a feeling. This
Yeah.
is this is an educated assumption based on
Hmm.
information that I have on me and on past experience.
Yeah,
So
and
when you
words
pair
do a
those three
lot.
things,
Yeah.
when you pair those
Hmm.
three things, and unfortunately, what I've seen is with women and in the United States, I will talk for the United States for now. I will say
Hmm.
the darker your skin, the more this is an issue.
Hmm.
When we speak with assertiveness, which is not aggression, but really being straightforward, clear, and standing in our words,
Hmm.
that level of certitude can easily be labeled as aggression.
Hmm. Yes.
Why is she so aggressive? Why does she have to be?
Yeah.
Where is it when we see that in a man, we're like, oh, he's confident. We know what's going on.
Hmm.
So being powerful as a woman is a double-edged sword. And I've often shared that I am perceived as very powerful. And I often hear nearly as a compliment from men and women. Oh, when I first met you, you were so intimidating. But then you open your mouth
Interesting.
and did it. And
Yeah.
I have a really high level, sea level um, person. And he's known me for a long time. And he said, Alessandra, you scare the poop out of me.
Hmm.
I'm like, how is that possible? We have raised our children together. And he's like, well, you just walk into a room. He was part of a committee with me. And he said,
Hmm.
when you walk into a room, you're just very clear about leading that room and where it needs to go. And I'm like, how come that level of leadership is associated with fear? When
Hmm.
you've also seen me do at the time do parkour or be silly with the children and I've been at your table and I've been around your swimming pool. Like there's nothing, as I said, I started off
Yeah.
extra warm, right? So
Yes. Yeah. It is, and there's so much that we could unpack with all of that, but I mean, think it's really important that, we recognize that there is issues. Depending, it's like a very fine balance of how do you actually make it work. I want to also just quick talk about the person who I was originally was, let me do it. I'll do it. I want to learn. I want to grow. So give it to me. And to the point where at one point I was severely burnt out. because I'm just like, I want it, give it to me because I'm trying to climb that ladder, right? And eventually I did learn that I can't do everything and it's okay to delegate, right? Because that's a leader's best friend. But there are so many people out there that I speak to, clearly that you speak to, who are just at that point of, as a female leader, even just, I don't know where to go from here because I don't want to give up the money, which is not an easy thing to do, having done it myself and then opening up my own business. You're going from 1 to 0. But a lot of them don't want to give up that title, that money, but really they are misaligned. So they stay there and they do everything.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that a little bit. How does that affect our leadership?
Well, one, I'm going to come back to this. Shifting out of that workhorse again, noteworthy. I used to talk about workhorses and powerhouses.
Hmm.
Right now, we talk about that group as the relentless. I have this matrix for the
Ah,
gilded. We call it the gilded paradox matrix. So looking at like,
hmm.
are you a legacy builder? Are you an icon? Are you one of the relentless, or are you a contortionist? So our
Hmm.
contortionists are the ones who have a seat but no voice, so they're constantly trying to bend
Ah,
themselves to like
fit
find that
in.
find that space where they can say the thing and affect the change. But
Right.
for the relentless, for our workhorses, first of all, recognize that moving out of that being everything to everyone at all times does not necessarily mean you will make less money or lose that power or lose that
Hmm.
impact. Actually, when you think about it, if you were to look at your value based on the number of hours you work and your salary, by showing up as a workhorse, you make far less.
Yes,
Right?
agreed.
The goal is to work less for the same salary. And when you can work less
Hmm.
for the same salary, you're actually making a lot of money.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, the other thing to realize is if you actually care about adding the greatest value you can to whatever system you're in. So if I'm thinking of a leader,
Hmm.
if you really care about being an excellent leader, being the best leader you can be, but even if you're starting in your career, if you're thinking about, I want to show up and really add value to my team, to my company, to this
Hmm.
business, then the idea should never be, let me do all the things. It has to be, let me figure out what I'm really good at that I love
Yes.
doing. Here's why the second one is so important. First of all, by focusing on what I'm really good at, for every ounce of energy I pour into the system, the output is
Much higher.
exponentially multiplied, right? But
Yeah.
the reason you have to think about what you really love doing as well is that's what's going to keep you in the job.
Hmm.
If you only do the
Absolutely.
things, I mean, Tara, tell me what's one thing you know you are so good at doing but you hate it. It is soul crushing. If you had to spend the next month doing only that thing, you would want to crawl in your bed and just maybe cry or go back to sleep or make that month go away. But you're really good
Right.
at it.
Well, you know what? I'd have to say it's podcast because, and listeners don't get this wrong. Podcasts take a lot of energy and work. I love the conversations, but when you have to, if I was to do this all the time, it would be tiring. It would be so draining because it'd be constant. I
Yep.
love having the mix of everything else that I do in there.
Yep. So, and there's all the back end of producing a
Oh,
podcast, which
yeah,
is like
absolutely.
not the fun work. The conversations might be fun, but there's the preparing, there's the finding the guest, there's the setting up, there's the vetting the guest. There's for you,
Processing.
those of you
Yeah.
listening, it's a huge amount of work, even when you have a team behind you to
Yes,
produce a
huge.
podcast. So think about that in a company. If you are a leader listening to this conversation, think about the people on your team who you're like, oh, we're going to go to our Terras and we're going to have them podcast all the time because they're amazing and we want this podcast to run. But eventually you have Tara doing something that she is really good at and she hates doing. She
Hmm.
is going to grow miserable. She's going to disengage and she will leave.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a common
So
thing at a lot of companies.
yeah. So the idea is workhorses. Yeah, absolutely. We love them because we can dump all the things on them. They will always raise their hands. That's the worst part.
Hmm.
Like they
I used
volunteer
to do
to be
that.
miserable.
Let me do it. Let me do it. Yeah, I
But
remember
if you
that.
recognize that there is for sure a workhorse in your team, if you recognize that you're the workhorse, the idea is if I really care about this team and I really care about the success of this team, of this product, of this unit, of this company, then My greatest value comes from doing what I love doing and excel at.
Hmm.
Misery is contagious. This is Dr. Wall, the psychologist, talking
Yeah.
about this.
Yeah.
Misery is absolutely contagious. When you have somebody on your team who's coming in as like, oh, it's a slog, I'm unhappy, even if they pretend to be happy, it just oozes out of them.
You feel
And
it.
and
Yeah.
other people start feeling it, but eventually they're also going to leave because they're
Hmm.
miserable.
Yeah.
And the second they leave, there's this gap. And while you're trying to find out who's going to replace your workhorse, who was doing six jobs instead of the two she should have been doing, other people have to come in. And now you're wearing them out. And it is this
Hmm.
really vicious cycle of just creating misery. So to my workhorses, like I'm telling my client that I just mentioned, I'm like, let's figure out what you love doing that you
Hmm.
excel at. Let's teach you how to sit through the discomfort, how to sit through the anxiety that's initially going to be produced by saying,
Yeah.
no, thank you. Most importantly, let's make sure we position you. So that's a branding for all intents and
Hmm.
purposes, but it has to be internal first.
Hmm.
Externally, so people understand why suddenly you're saying no to certain things, but you're asking for more of other things.
Yeah.
And for the leader, it is undermining to your teams to be doing all the things. You're not allowing them to learn and grow. You're not
Yeah.
allowing them to understand how you think through problems because you're stepping in and doing everything. And you become, I have another client of mine who was a global director of sales in the ag business. And I looked at her, I'm like, you are a glorified admin for your team. And then you wonder why they don't respect you. Oh, they love you. You're going to do their timesheets. You're going to do all the things
Yeah.
that you know are not fun that they don't want to do. But in a crisis, they don't respect you. Plus, in a crisis, you are so tapped out.
Hmm.
You're not capable of showing
Hmm.
up the way you need to show up. And so it
Hmm.
was a lot of work.
Yeah. I call it filling the leadership bucket.
Mhm.
Right? To me, that's what it is. It's about really filling what you enjoy doing and start to focus on that so you can build your team and your culture. Fill the leadership bucket, you know? Don't do what you hate unless, I mean, we're all going to have some little piece of admin we have to do. I mean, it's just, it is what it is, right? But
Yes.
fill the bucket, fill the leadership bucket. I go ahead.
I was going to say, when I was a psychologist, when I started, I loved it. I loved it so much.
Hmm.
I would walk into work singing every single day.
Yeah.
And I would sit in sessions and just be giddy and think, oh. And then there came a point where I didn't. And then there came a point
Hmm.
where I wanted to open up my door and run out and just shake people and go do something about it.
Hmm.
So it was really moving into this space. That's part of why I went into coaching. But even in coaching, understanding like, oh, who are the people I need to work with? Because not everybody coming
Hmm.
into coaching wants to do something about it.
Yes, I agree.
Or at a place where they can do something about it, or they're
Hmm.
ready. Like it's it's about really paying attention, like slowing down long enough to pay attention to yourself, to realize
Hmm.
what do I need
Yeah.
to be happy and fulfilled and successful. And also I think of leaders often as parents. It's about
Hmm.
modeling that. We have a lot of people looking at
Yes.
us
Yeah.
for what it takes to lead, how you're supposed to show up when you're a leader, what it takes to be successful. Like, let's model the good stuff instead of modeling the toxicity that we got caught up in.
Yeah, absolutely. I always tell people you have to lead by the right example. Otherwise, they're just going to follow whatever you're doing, and it's not necessarily a great thing, right?
Yeah.
I would love to sum up our conversation today because I know that we could continue talking, but we are running low on time. So, if there was something that you wanted to take our conversation and sum it up for those who are listening, maybe there's just something that you want to make sure they hear from you today, what would you say?
There is such a thing as being incredibly successful and deeply fulfilled. And reaching that place is only possible if you slow down and take the time to pay attention. Pay attention to your levels of satisfaction, pay attention to your levels of stress, pay attention to what you love doing,
Hmm.
and recognize that in order to get to that place, you're going to have to step through discomfort because you're
And
going to
make
have to
change.
shift the way you've done the things you've done and make
Hmm.
change. And change is by its very nature uncomfortable. But
Yes.
it's not a pipe dream. It is so possible. and it is worth it. And if you don't know how to do it on your own, then you contact Tara, or you contact me, or you contact somebody who's a good guide and who's going to be
Hmm.
able to see things you can't see because you're stuck in it.
Yeah, that's why we have coaches, right? I have
I
my own. I'm sure you have your own,
I've had
and
a
it's
coach
just,
since 2019, and so, there are times where
yep,
I've had multiple coaches at once. I cannot imagine
yeah,
operating without a coach. It's not about
me
not being
either.
successful, it's about being really successful and wanting to maintain the success and the satisfaction.
Absolutely. That was a great way to sum up our conversation today. If our audience wanted to learn more about you, find you, where can they find you online?
My website, which is Noteworthy Inc. So INC for the Inc.co. So Noteworthy is the
Awesome.
name of my company.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing all these insights and talking to us today about the different types of people that are out there and that we can get to where we want to go. That's the
Yeah.
important part.
And if anybody's interested, if you go to the website, you can take the test and see which of the where are you on that matrix.
Love that. Thank you for that resource too.
Thanks, Tara.
Of course, we thank you, our audience. We hope you gained some valuable insights or tips from today's conversation with Alessandra. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a great rating. This helps us and our guests like Alessandra reach even more leaders with this helpful advice, tools, tips, and more. We love helping leaders grow and thrive, and we would love for you to consider our brand new Amplifying Leadership Circle community. You do not need to lead alone. We do know that leadership is better when we do it together. For more information about our community and all of our Amplifying Leadership services, please visit us anytime at amplifyingleadership.ca, a division of Twin Life Coaching and Business Services. Until next time, remember, leadership matters.